Billy Hofacker has been a personal trainer for over 20 years, and he's the owner and CEO of Total Body Bootcamp and Performance Center with two successful locations in the hyper-competitive market of Long Island, New York. After several years of being a full-time professional martial artist and BJJ black belt, Billy is now passionate about helping fitness professionals with their money. He's the author of Fitness Profits, as well as the creator of Financial Freedom for Health and Fitness Professionals course. Billy is also the host of the leading financial podcast for Fit Pros, Your Money Fitness Coach podcast. Billy is regularly an expert guest on local and national podcasts and media. He's also a distinguished Toastmaster with Toastmasters International. Billy has conducted hundreds of presentations over the years at churches, businesses, and organizations, and I can't wait to introduce him to you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to win with money. Hey, Billy, welcome to Two Brain Radio.
Thank you, Chris. I am super pumped to chat and share hopefully some valuable info.
I'm sure, and I can't wait, man. Just to give people context on where you're coming from, what brought you into the fitness industry in the first place?
I mean, the longer, deeper story where it's going to feel like you're my therapist has to do with when I was younger, has to do with some bullying and just me really feeling like I needed to learn how to protect myself. I needed to gain confidence. So that's how I got into working out. I got into working out in martial arts. And then I don't know how common this is, but it's like the only thing I've ever done. I never had a real job, I guess you would say. I started off I was in community college, and a guy that he ended up becoming like a friend / mentor. He was a little bit older than me. He was just letting me know. He's like, yeah, I train these women at my gym, and he was making like, I want to say he was making like $100 a session. This is like 23 years ago. And I was like, really? I was like, tell me more. So I was actually going for pre-physical therapy at the time. I just knew I because of my background, because of my interests and passions, I knew I wanted to do something in the health, fitness, like sciencey type realm. And the only thing I really could think of was physical therapy. And I had experience with my own therapist with a back injury. So I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool to help other people. And then my path changed a little bit when I was doing my volunteer hours, and I became pretty friendly with this physical therapist at the clinic. Her name was Colleen. And I don't know if I peeked over at her check or she showed me, but I remember me being shocked because I was doing like part-time personal training. I'm like, am I making more than her? And I was like, so that definitely was part of the influence. And then I walked past the room and I saw this elderly, obese person, getting a massage, and I saw skin flying everywhere. And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that. So it just really, my experience just showed me that it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I'm sure it was just like my experience, but that led me towards working towards personal training. And that was like 23 years ago. And I've had definitely some ups and downs and some zigzags. There was a period there where I did martial arts professionally for a few years, but it's really all I've done.
That's amazing, man. So that's a great story on how you got started in fitness. How did you get started, or how did you realize that fitness pros needed help with financial management, or how to win with money?
Okay. So man, going back about 11 years ago now, I was doing my thing. I was living my life. I'm generally like happy, positive, optimistic kind of guy. It's just how I'm wired. I was just living my life. I was recently married, about to start a family. I was doing what I loved, which was training people. And then one day I got a knock on the door as I was getting ready for work. I think it was like 7:30 in the morning. I opened the door, and there's this big muscle bound dude standing on my porch. He's got tattoos on his neck. He's got a goatee, shaved head. And I looked past him and I saw my beautiful, shiny, brand new white Honda Accord, and it was hooked up to his tow truck. And it was like a shock. What was shocking about it, well, I guess that's like kind of the definition of shocked, right? Is like, I didn't know it was coming. I didn't even realize that it was in danger of that happening. I never heard of it. I'm like, what's going on here? That's how bad things were, is that I didn't even know. Because now that I look back, like I had to have been behind several months, and I've had to have been getting warnings. That just doesn't happen, out of nowhere. But for me, it did. I was just really oblivious. I was hiding my head under the sand, or brushing the dirt under the carpet, however you want to say it. And from that, at that point, I dug around, and I wanted to at least get some sense of reality, and discovered that my wife and I were 130,000 in change in non-mortgage debt. So it was crazy. We had I think I had every debt possible. I had medical debt, I had credit card debt, high interest. We had student loans on both sides. We had loans with friends, loans with family members. It was a mess. Stacks and stacks of bills piled up to here. And so that was the start of my journey. So how I got to realize there was a need in the fitness industry was years later. The story has a really good ending. In 5 years, we were able to pay off every dollar, every cent of that debt. And then I started, just like, I guess, a lot of guys, or hopefully a lot of guys, they start getting involved with coaching and masterminding. So I started getting around more people. And people would start asking me like how I'm doing, how I'm running my business, because the businesses were successful. I have 2 facilities here on Long Island, and we have a small footprint model, and it was things were going really well for us. So people started asking me questions. That ultimately led to me doing a little bit of business coaching. I ended up creating a sort of like a product. It was more than a product, more like I don't want to say license program, but it was the real deal. It was kind of like how to run the business. That's what started the journey to the financial stuff, because then I started really digging into things with people, and they would come up to me, and they would tell me the reality of their business, and it wasn't good in many cases. People that were they weren't too far from having their doors shut down. They were heavily in debt. They were making no money. They weren't taking home any money, regardless of what the Instagram photos or the Facebook photos showed. They weren't doing well financially. And that's when I realized that, wow, there's a huge need here. The level of financial education and knowledge is really low. It's probably like that in every industry, but obviously this is the one that I'm in, and that's what I saw. So that led to me doing all this stuff. I know that was super long-winded.
No, I think that's great. And you know what? I do think that the need is even greater in fitness, because fitness is generally chosen as a career by passionate people who are really focused on just helping people out and getting them fitter and healthier. There's a low barrier to entry to enter the field, thank goodness. But that also means that you might not have a financial background or an education. I mean, I certainly didn't when I started. So, what problem do people bring you most often, or what do you see out there most often among fit pros?
It's like, this isn't really like the answer I almost even want to give, because it doesn't sound so exciting. But what seems to be coming up a lot is like the relationship with money. Things like I can't control my spending, and things like I can't get on the same page with my spouse, because she or he is doing one thing and I'm doing another, and we can't seem to get alignment. So it's like, I wish it was easier. I wish it was just like, hey, all you need to do is like X, Y, and Z. But these are some deeper issues that people really need to reflect and figure out, why they have certain behaviors, or why they're having problems with communication. So these are like deeper issues, but those are some. And then of course there's also the very practical things, like, hey, I'm in debt, and I need to make a plan. I'm ready to take action, and I just need to figure out how to do it. And that could be on the personal side and on the business side as well.
I would love to learn more about that relationship with money concept. So, in a lot of the gyms that we worked with started out that way, right? I'm just really passionate about CrossFit or sports training or whatever it is. And so I feel kind of guilty about even charging $1 for it, let alone what I should be charging. And we've just started working with more and more yoga gyms now. And I see this pervasive attitude there too, of like, oh, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. I feel guilty about making a good wage. What are some tools or tactics that we could use to overcome that mindset?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to first identifying it, and just recognizing the value that we're actually bringing. People think, oh, I'm just training them for an hour. I shouldn't charge too much. I had one guy actually yesterday, a coaching client. He told me that he'd raised his rates, and one of his clients called him greedy. And it actually pissed me off, like to my core. I got really mad for him. And I said, dude, I said, I really, man, I want to talk to this guy, because, what does he do? And he's like some kind of professional, and what does he charge? And, of course he's, making all types of money, and he has the nerve to say this guy's greedy because he's a life changer. He's adding so much value. So I just, my advice to that young man was to really recognize who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. I said, listen, if this guy's going to call you greedy for charging, if I told you the actual numbers, it's like so far from greedy. I said, I don't think you want to work with a guy like that. You want to work with people that value you, value your time, and they're happy to pay what you're worth. So I think it's just a lot of it is it's just not having that confidence, partly because, yeah, they got into it because it was a passion. They love working out. They like helping people, and they don't have that business sense or that financial knowledge, and they're not confident in a lot of times treating it like a business and realizing that, hey, if I'm charging, only X amount of dollars and I have all this overhead, there's really very little left. And number one, that's going to be a problem just to survive. But number two, if I ever want to grow this thing or step out of a coaching role, there's no margin to do that. How am I going to, I'm barely making any money myself. How am I going to pay somebody else to provide a service? So they just have to really, I think it's education, knowledge, it's getting more comfortable with some of these things.
So repetition and experience probably helps. Would you say so, Billy? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tried to encourage him, like, hey, we all, kind of start there. We all go through this. Most of us aren't, born with like super business and financial savvy. It's something that we do have to go through. But at some point we do have to get uncomfortable. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to just take a chance, just do different things to put yourself out there and take a chance. And I basically assured him, I said, listen, you raising your rates, I basically guaranteed him. I said, I could guarantee you that it's going to be a good move for you. You're going to be happier that you did that. You're either going to retain all of your clients, or you're going to retain the ones that you want. And the ones that are on your waiting list that you just told me about are going to be happy to fill in that spot of if somebody does leave.
Oh yeah, I agree, man. So, early on, a lot of us had to learn that lesson the hard way. And for me, it was, I worked, I had like 13 client hours booked back to back, no breaks all day. I finally went out of my little 10 by 10 tiny personal training studio gym at 9 o'clock and counted up the money. And I said, there's just not enough. Like, I cannot support my lifestyle on this. And that's what forced me to do it. But the other problem that comes in at that stage too is debt. And debt can really creep up on you. You mentioned that was a problem for you. How did you actually overcome it and like pay off over 100,000 in consumer debt in 5 years?
Well, the very first thing that had to happen, which is kind of obvious, but just to make sure we're not looking past it, is I just made a very clear decision that I was going to do it. It was like a switch that went off. I was really mad at myself. I was mad at basically the husband I was being to even put our family in that position. And I said, this is it. I am done with this. I am changing things. We are going to do whatever it takes to get out of this debt and move forward. So that was like the very first thing. And then after that, you just take one step after the other. I got into that $1 at a time, and I had to get out of it $1 at a time. People are surprised when I tell them that, I would do things like, take like a little extra, $1.60 and put it towards like a $2,000 debt. And it's like, why would you do that? You're not making any progress with that. And it was just the idea of like becoming that kind of person, like creating that identity in ourselves, that like, we're just people that are getting out of debt and we're doing whatever it takes. If it's an extra 1 penny, I'm going to pay it. As crazy as that sounds, that's the kind of stuff that we did. And then at one point we were doing well, we were making progress. And of course, you get discouraged because, you might make progress. And then there's a month where you make no progress, or maybe you even fall back a little bit. Maybe you have a hard month and you're like, man, like we're working our tails off. It's years into this. I just kind of want to give up. But at one point we just decided, it was actually my wife's thought. She said, we just need, we were dedicated to it, but we had some extra money just kind of sitting around, and we were like scared to let it go. We weren't totally organized. We just went, and this is one of my biggest tips, is we just went all in, laser focused. We are taking every penny we can spare, and we were putting it towards this debt. And as far as like the exact mechanics, we used what's called the debt snowball. So the debt snowball was something I also encourage people to do, either the debt snowball or something like it. Basically, what you do is you're going to just list out all of your debts. You're going to list out what they are, whether it's a Visa credit card or a card note, whatever it is, you list it out. You list the total dollar amount, the balance that's due. You list the interest rate. You list the, when it's due. You list a minimum payment that's due, and then the estimated payoff date. So I always encourage people to just get that list together. Like even just doing that. And actually I was just on another show, and somebody asked me, like, when you did that, didn't it like freak you out? Because you did that and you saw like 130 at the bottom. And I was like, you know what? Surprisingly, it didn't do that. It actually gave me a little bit of like comfort, because I'm like, I'm looking at it. This is what we have to deal with. I know I'd rather know what we're dealing with than just be blind to it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is a monster of a goal, but at least I know what I'm dealing with, and we can start taking action. So then basically you just list them out in the order you want to pay them. You knock out that lowest balance first, and then you take that minimum payment that you were paying towards that, and you lump it together, and you start creating that snowball. So then you're going to pay down the next one. And it is powerful when you focus on it. It doesn't work if you're trying to do that and you're trying to accomplish like 6 other financial goals. You have to be focused. But when you are, it works. It's worked for me. It's worked for many clients. And by the time I got to the end of it, it was a huge amount. I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was like either $6,000 or $8,000 payment towards that last debt. That's how big that snowball got, because I had so much. And it was, so you're taking the minimum payments plus whatever extra you have. So, you can, maybe if you have a training gym, maybe you run a special program, you do a nutrition program, you try to make an extra $1,000 and you put that towards it. I was going around doing seminars for $250 a pop, and I was just throwing that towards the debt. I was, selling stuff. I was just doing whatever I could to make progress.
Do you think in the long run, Billy, that helped you, like learning that progress, or maybe just because it made you hungry to do these extra things to create the revenue to pay it off?
Yeah, that actually gives me a few thoughts. So number one, going through that experience 100% helped me with the business, because that was all personal. There was a little bit of business debt from previous business, but my business has been debt free from the start. Other than that, it was like some IRS payments that I owed from a previous business. That's a whole nother story with not being planned for taxes. I think we all go through that at some point, seems like. And so it was a tremendous lesson on the business side, because I was able to prevent going into debt on the business, which I don't know if that would have happened had I not gone through that. That was number one. Number two, it has given me the ability, I think, to be able to set and achieve financial goals. And it creates motivation and momentum. And I think I actually heard this on your podcast, Chris, where it's like you set a benchmark, and you need to do the work to achieve it. So I need to make more money to pay down this debt. I need to, we operate debt free. So it's like, if I need to buy this equipment, I need to save the money. That creates like really good habits, right? Because now you're doing the work to get there, and you just sort of create this like internal motivation to reach more goals. So I think it did that. It made me, this is good and bad, but it made me not like gray. It made me like all in on my goals. I think some people, they're carrying like a few $1,000s of debt and they're able to manage it, but they never really learn the lesson of really making progress. I think going through that, being at that rock bottom point, it really made that flip for me, which I don't know what would have happened if it wasn't so bad. And then finally, I think what it did for my marriage and my family, although it was painful in the moment, I think that turned out to be a big advantage, because it's like something my wife and I can, we bonded over it. We did this together. It was just her and I in terms of, at that point in our lives. And it was just something that was only we would understand it with each other. And I think it just brought us closer, and now it's helped us as we've worked towards other things.
That's great, man. And I really think that, the best mentorship comes from experience like this. So when somebody seeks out your service, Billy, like what's the very first thing that you work on with them?
Well, we usually, I usually like to get into, just like any other coach, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. I'm going to find out, what their needs are, what their wants are, what are their biggest pain points. But once we start like really getting into the actual steps, we do something called what do we call it? An inventory, creating an inventory. So we just want to get a snapshot. Same idea. It's like, if you don't know where you are, it's like our fitness clients, most of us, we're doing some kind of assessment, whether it's a movement screen or a strength test. It's something as we're starting with that person to know, where are you starting from? If you want to lose weight, all right, how much do you want to lose? Where are you starting from? Same idea with the finances. So let's look at it. Let's put it out there. What's your, depends. Like, is it net worth? Is it total debt? Is it savings? Where are you in your life? What are your goals? And then once we get an idea of where they are, we could start working on where they want to go, and then start creating a plan to get there.
Okay, that's great, man. I've got a question that's come up in our higher level group. These are the Tinkers. There becomes this point where you're earning more money than you need to earn. You're working only about as much as you want to, and a lot of them still choose to coach because they just love it. So they might do an hour or two, a day. But how do you stay motivated after that?
Yeah.
Beyond this point.
Yeah, that's I love that. That's something I've dealt with a lot myself. And I'll tell you a quick point to that was when we made that last payment. So this is even getting before what you would call the tinker stage. So this is going back when we paid off that debt. It reminds me of that because it was such a big goal. And, people ask me, that must've felt awesome. Like, you paid off all that debt. That's crazy. And I didn't feel like that. That's kind of embarrassing, right? Like, I made that last payment, and like maybe for like 3 seconds, like I felt really good. And then it was like, where's the balloons and where's all the bells and whistles? Like life is pretty much the same, right? We still have all of our other problems, and now it's just kind of like on to the next thing. So I would just encourage people. I've been in that boat, and it's just embracing the journey and realizing that a big part of success, and especially financial success, sometimes it's just not that exciting. It's just doing things consistently over time and getting to the point where you have that time freedom, and, finding joy in whatever it is that brings you joy, whether it's time with your family, whether it's, starting a side business, whether it's getting involved with different investments. But you kind of find those things to sort of, keep you going, creating new goals. And then ultimately it's about, like for me, I have 4 kids. So it's like, what can I do? I'm starting to get into investments with my 10-year-old. And it's like, that's kind of exciting to me. It's like, what, cause it's new to me. I've never taught a 10-year-old about investing. So it's kind of like a new goal in and of itself. So I think things like that can keep you motivated, because for me, it's not about the money. Just like for a lot of people listening, like you don't really want, you only want so much stuff. Like what is all that stuff going to do for you at the end of the day? Maybe you really enjoy cars, and that's all good. But at some point, it's like, there's a little bit more to it than that. And it's, teaching those kids, it's giving back, it's really making an impact. It's really, maybe getting joy from giving, whether it's your time or your money. But I don't want to just rush past that point of, I think just kind of just accept that it's a process. And maybe right now you're not feeling, super motivated because you didn't just start a brand new gym, and you just kind of, you've done really well, and your reward is now, you kind of get to do what you want. But if you look at anybody who's been successful financially in the long term, it's just been like this, like plodding along, like, even Warren Buffett, it's been in the news a lot lately where, 99 point something % of his net worth was achieved after age 65, and even more in recent years. Why is that? Because he was investing since age 10. And you look at, 55 years of getting to those, billions and billions. And then now he's like 90. And it's like, man, that's not going to sell a ton of, books or tons of programs. Hey, invest, slowly and steadily for decades and decades and decades. But we all know that if you got to that tinker level, then you know that it's a process and it takes time.
That's great, man. Another question that comes up a lot in our tinker program is, what should I do with the money? So I've got this money coming out of the gym. Do I go open another gym? Do I buy sports cars? Do I put it in index funds? Like, what do you tell people to go all in on their project, to diversify? What advice do you have?
I'm a big fan of, and this is how my mind works. So I think that's part of it, is like figuring out how your mind works and the way you operate, because we're all different. But one of the things that works well for me is I like dealing with percentages. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of create, and it could be arbitrary. It could be just based on, how much effort you want to put into one area versus another. But you might say, man, don't miss the point of, you worked really hard and you've earned this money. So don't miss the point of enjoying that money. So you might say, hey, for any extra profit that we have, I'm going to take, let's say, 50% of it, or, 55% of it, or 60% of it. And I'm going to put it towards like these personal goals that I have. They could be, it could be, some fancy vacations. It could be, a material thing or other experience. But then I'm going to take the rest of this, and I'm going to put it towards investments. I'm going to put it towards assets. I'm going to put it towards the stock market, or I'm going to put it towards real estate, or I'm going to put it towards this side hustle that I'm working on. So I just think it comes down to really getting an understanding of the vision you have and what you want to do. Like I have one guy who, he's doing really well. He's at that level you're talking about, and he just doesn't want to have another business. He doesn't want to get involved with real estate. He just wants to put his money in like low cost index funds and let it grow. He still enjoys training. He's kind of like the mayor of his facility, and he likes it. So he's got a good grasp of what he wants to do and what he likes. But then you have, another guy who is starting to get into like, Airbnbs and getting into that whole thing. And that's great, but they're different personalities. And one guy is really into that and he enjoys it, and the other guy doesn't want anything to do with it. So I think we have to be careful of just doing something because maybe somebody else is doing it. And I've struggled with that. It's like, man, like that guy's doing it, maybe I should do that. It's like, not necessarily, because everything we say yes to, we're automatically saying no to something else. So just kind of weighing the downside versus the upside, and figuring out what you want to do. But I will say that's a good problem.
It's a great problem for sure. But I definitely agree. Like, it's very easy to get distracted at this level, especially if you spent a long time working really hard and not having any money to suddenly have it now. You're just tempted to do everything.
Yeah. So let me add one thing there, because I would if this saves one person, it'll be worth our time. There's the difference between making money and then keeping money, and I think that could be a potential danger or risk for somebody. You work so hard, you got to the point, you're able to build up some savings, and then you took some huge risk that just really wasn't worth it for you. So kind of make sure you're just weighing that out, and if there is a risk, make sure it's smart. Make sure you're not just, throwing it into something that, who knows what's going to happen. It's just a different skill set. I should say keeping money is different skill than making money.
That's really insightful, because it is very, very tempting once you've been successful at a gym or a personal training studio or yoga studio to be like, I'm going to go open a coffee shop. And that is like my constant temptation.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Because who says, just because you're a gym owner, who says you're going to be a great call? And maybe you are, and maybe that's fine. But exactly. No, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. And, even from some of the mentors that I've had who had very boring businesses, maybe they started like a garbage company or something. And then they sold it and they're really wealthy, and then they become bored. And so, a lot of the less disciplined ones would say, what do I want to do next? Well, I'm really interested in coffee. I'm going to go start a coffee house. But what these really disciplined mentors do is they'll say, I'm going to start another garbage business, sanitation business, because I know how to do that.
Yeah.
It would be dumb of me to go learn everything. So I'm going to go start it. We're going to grow faster than I did the first time. I'm probably going to sell it again. So yeah, it's, I've been listening to more of this type of advice recently, Billy. And I think like what you're saying there is super important. It's harder to keep money than it is to make money.
Nice. I think a lot of us that are kind of wired as entrepreneurs, we want to monetize everything.
Yeah.
It's like, I love to read books. So maybe I'll open a bookstore. It's like, sometimes it's just, just kind of stay in your lane and stick to your strengths. And I've had that, like with jujitsu. So I've done jujitsu my whole life. And, I can't tell you how many times I thought about, like, if I had my own jujitsu school, but it's like, yeah, that just creates so much more stuff. And it's like, is it worth it?
Yeah. And you'll probably wind up hating jujitsu,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's the big fear. I definitely get that. Okay, man. So tell us about your program. Gym owners, fit pros, they call you up. What happens?
Yeah, so I'm more of the style of coach that, kind of just believe that, the people that contact me, they're motivated, they want to make a change, they have what it takes. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to give them perspective. I'm going to share my experience. I'm going to ask questions to really get them to discover their next steps. I'm going to provide accountability behind that. And we're going to try to work through these different stages, depending on where they're at. I've worked with people who are heavily in debt. I've worked with people that are more in that tinker phase that you're talking about. And so it's going to be a different strategy for each person, but it's just going to be, meeting them where they're at and giving them action steps and accountability to get into their goal.
That's fantastic, man. How do people reach you or find your program?
So I think the best way, if anybody just wants to kind of like hear more, check out more of the content, I'd love for you to check out the podcast. It's Your Fitness Money Coach Podcast. And then if you want to contact me directly, I think social media is fine. Like Facebook, it's Billy Hofacker, or William, my given name, Hofacker. You can catch me there. I mean, the website is yourfitnessmoneycoach.com. So any of those would be great.
That's great, Billy. Hey, man, thanks for coming on. I think you've given us a lot of value, and there's a few specific tools that people can take away from this. We'll put that link in the show notes for everybody. And yeah, keep doing it, man. Keep making Fit Pros more successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your encouragement, and consider it an honor to be on your show, and just appreciate all that you're doing as well.
All right, man.